Hi there, everyone. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes here. We're working on some technical difficulties, so we'll be on in just a moment. Okay, well, we're on, so broadcast is live, by the way. Okay, all right. So I'm gonna go get us started. We're good. You're live, so just know that. Okay, sorry. Yeah. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for your patience. We apologize for our technical difficulties. Happy Friday. I think we're all really glad it's Friday. So we're here doing our next installment of the Statehouse Report webinar. So our advocacy team is going to go ahead and give us an update on what's going on at the Capitol. So with that, I will turn it over to Megan Dollar to get us started.
Thank you, McKenna. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Apologies for cutting it really close. That happens this time of year. Well, with that, I think we'll just kind of jump in. One thing I want to note that as of tomorrow, we will be halfway through the session. So yay! I think Heather, why don't we get started with you, and then we'll kick it back over here to this room, and then we'll go.
All right, thanks so much, Megan. So I want to start off and talk about some wildfire bills. The first bill that I want to talk about is House Bill 1007. This is Assistance Landowner Wildfire Mitigation. This is the bill which makes grant money available to local governments who want to conduct outreach to landowners around mitigation programs or fire mitigation best practices. CML is supporting this bill. It was heard latest in the House Finance Committee this past week and passed out of there 9-1. So it's making its way onto appropriations. I don't anticipate any issues, but we'll continue to support it through appropriations. The second wildfire bill I want to talk about is House Bill 1132. This is regulation and services for wildfire mitigation. This was heard in the House Energy and Environment Committee this week. Originally, we had some concerns about how the provisions of the bill would work. It added some criteria around procedures for prescribed burns that may have conflicted with local ordinances and seemed to put some liability possibly on local fire departments. However, the bill was amended significantly in committee, and now it simply requires that a private landowner notify a fire department before conducting a controlled burn. It also adds some money into the Fire Service Education and Training Fund for them to buy a mobile driver simulator unit to help firefighters learn how to safely drive large equipment to the scene of fires. So I believe pending approval of the CML board, we will actually be in a support position on this bill. It did pass 12-0 out of the House Energy and Environment Committee yesterday, and it's on its way to appropriations. Next, I'll go over some natural resources bills. Senate Bill 131, this was Protect Health of People and Pollinators. This was the bill which would have removed the state preemption on local governments to regulate pesticides within certain parameters above and beyond what the state requires. The bill was heard in the Senate Ag Committee last Thursday. There were about 90 people that signed up to testify. It was a long committee, and unfortunately, there was a lot of opposition to the bill. The ag groups, despite being exempted from the bill, were convinced that this was somehow an attempt to regulate the types of pesticides that the ag producers used. And I think, frankly, there was a lot of misinformation and sensationalism that was being perpetuated by some of the opponents. So unfortunately, that bill died in the committee 6-1. The next bill I'll talk about is House Bill 1151. This is the turf replacement program. This is the bill that directs the Colorado Water Conservation Board to create a program which will help fund local governments who have in-house turf removal programs or who contract with third parties who provide turf removal services. We're supporting the bill and testified in support in the House Ag Committee this past week. It passed unanimously and will make its way to appropriations. A couple special districts bills I want to just go over quickly. House Bill 1097, the dissolution of special districts. This is the bill which extends to counties the power to dissolve special districts. Municipalities already have this power, but we added an amendment onto the bill to say that if 85% of a special district is in the boundaries of municipality, the county has to get our approval before they begin the process of dissolution. So we are supporting that bill now that that has gone on. That passed the Senate third reading this past week, and I assume it will be signed by the governor. Next bill I want to talk about is Senate Bill 136. This is special district governance. This was an interesting bill which would have extended the power of initiative and referendum to special districts. It also included a lot of new criteria for developer-based boards in metro districts. It was really a response to reports of developer-controlled metro districts behaving badly, which we've seen in the last few years. CML was neutral on this bill because it didn't impact the municipal special district relationship. But I did listen in. It was heard in Senate Local Government Committee and was postponed indefinitely. So it had some very big changes. And I think a lot of unintended consequences. So that was postponed indefinitely. Last thing I'll go over is elections. So House Bill 1273, this is protections for election official. This is a newly dropped bill. The bill adds election officials to the anti-doxing statutes. So it basically makes it illegal for a person to put the personal information of an election official or their family publicly available on the internet. It also allows an election worker to file a request with the state or local government to remove any personal information from records that they maintain on the internet, I should mention. So for municipal purposes, an election worker is defined in the bill as a municipal clerk, a canvassing board, a member of a canvassing board, or anyone who's contracted for performance of election duties. So that will be heard in on the 17th in the House State Affairs Committee. We are supporting that bill based on some reports from our clerks that they've experienced this type of doxing before, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen to them again. So we will be supporting that bill when it comes up. Senate Bill 152. This is the residents of voters who, whose home is destroyed. So this is a bill that is a direct response to the Marshall Fire, and it adds language into Title I and Title 31 to make sure folks whose home is destroyed and who intend to return when they rebuild can continue to vote at their address during that process. CML suggested the language for the Title 31 portion of this bill, which just codifies what they're already doing in areas like Louisville and Superior. It'll codify that on a statewide basis. So we are supporting that bill, and that will be heard in committee in the Senate State Affairs Committee on Tuesday. And I think that's it for me, and I'm happy to pass it back to the Megans.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, Heather. I think I'm next, so I'll just kick it off. First thing I want to quickly discuss is House Bill 1159. This bill creates a Center for Recycling Products under the umbrella of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. This bill is kind of a way for, is a central place for recycling products, and that creates a centralized place for governments, local governments, to send their recycled products after collection. So it's a way to help local governments save money. One of the biggest hurdles to recycling in our state is that it's really expensive to send it out. We usually have to send it out of state or even out of the country. And this would create a market within our state to help increase recycling rates. So that bill passed House third reading this week, and it's off to the Senate, where it will be heard by the Senate. One other thing that went on this week, the House Judiciary Committee took action on House Bill 1131. The testimony was taken on this bill back in February, and this week the committee took action. The bill increases the age at which a person can be prosecuted for a crime from age 10 to age 13. There are some exceptions, or the only exception as the bill was introduced was homicide. The bill was heavily amended through language that was requested by Department of Human Services and other stakeholders, including CML, although all of our language did not make it in the bill. CML is still currently opposing the bill unless it's amended further. Some changes that were made, it clarifies the bill to specify that municipal courts are included in this jurisdictional change. That was added in committee. It also carves out crimes of sexual assault. So if you are in that age group between 10 to 12, you can still be prosecuted if you commit homicide or a sexual assault crime. And there are some other amendments. Most notably, it creates a working group to determine how this age group will be treated if they commit some of this behavior that they will no longer be able to be prosecuted for. The work group includes, at our request, some victims' rights services, courts that are experienced in diversion programs, but we're still missing a lot of representation on that working group that we've requested. So again, CML is still opposed to that bill unless it's amended. It's headed to the Appropriations Committee and then will be heard on second reading by the House. So next week, I have two bills up in committee on Tuesday. The first one being House Bill 1028, which creates a statewide safety stop, which means that a person can roll through a stoplight or a stop sign. This is statewide, and it preempts any local ordinances that have been passed in reference to safety stops. So far, I believe 8 municipalities have passed some legislation regarding this statute or this kind of ordinance, and that would be preempted by this bill. So CML is opposed to that bill because it does take away a significant piece of local control over intersections in our cities. I am aware of 2 amendments that are going to be put on the bill. One of them is at our request that the bill exclude existing bicycle infrastructure. So that would include an intersection that has a light that is specific to bikes. So I can think of a couple of examples here in Denver, but that would include just if it's a green bike or a red bike, you can't just roll through that because of this new law. You would have to adhere to that bicycle light that is specific to your mode of transportation. There is also discussion of creating an age limit for who's able to do a safety stop. So currently it's any age. So if you're 5, if you're 7, if you're 13, you can roll through a stoplight, even at a really busy intersection. So this is something that really concerned us and a lot of our members. So I do believe there is going to be language that will create an age limit of 14. So if you're below the age of 14, you would not be able to just cruise through a stoplight, and CML would be supportive of that, but we are still opposed to the bill because of the local control issues that are present. The next bill I have on Tuesday is Senate Bill 138, which is a pretty expansive greenhouse gas reduction bill brought to us by Senator Hansen. Apart from excuse me, apart from changing the greenhouse gas reduction goals that are currently set out in statute, the bill prohibits the sale and marketing of small gas engines in non-attainment areas. So non-attainment areas would be places, you know, along the I-25 corridor that don't meet air quality standards currently. And that prohibition would begin in the year 2030. The bill also establishes authority for the director of the Air Quality Control Division to establish a rebate program for people to turn in their small engine motors. For example, that would include gas-powered lawnmowers, gas-powered leaf blowers, snow blowers, etc. So a person would be able to turn those in for a rebate. And we are asking that the sponsor of the bill include municipalities, municipal governments in that rebate program as a way to incentivize local governments to switch over from gas-powered lawn equipment essentially to electric-powered lawn equipment. There was an issue raised with this prohibition of lawn equipment. A similar bill passed in California. However, California did receive permission from the federal government to enact such a law. Colorado does not have that same ability as California. So technically, Colorado is preempted by federal law from passing a prohibition of the sale of this type of equipment. So it is my understanding that that prohibition language will come out of the bill, and the bill will simply be an incentive program for people to turn in their gas-powered equipment. And then for the following week, CML is supporting House Bill 1277, which allows municipalities and public entities to use credit unions to finance projects or for deposits or public project financing. That bill will be heard on March 24th by the House Business Committee, and CML is supportive of that bill. And that is actually all that I have, and I believe I'm handing it over to Jacqueline.
So Megan, before we get
going, I have questions, I'm sorry.
Yes, awesome, thank you. So the first question asks if you can restate the number of the recycling center bill.
Yeah, that is House Bill 1159.
Wonderful, thanks. And then the next one asks if you need members to testify in opposition of 1028.
Absolutely, if you want to testify on that bill, please feel free. It's my understanding that the bill will pass out of committee, though. So even though CML is opposed and we have let the sponsors and the committee members know about our opposition, it's my understanding that the bill will pass out of committee. But please, yes, feel free to voice your concerns at the committee hearing on Tuesday.
If you need help getting signed up or need any instructions, feel free to reach out to one of us.
Yes, please.
Sweet, thank you. I think that's all for now, so I think we can turn it over to Jacqueline.
Great. So I will just go down my bill list and give you guys an update. 1035, the Modernization of the Older Coloradans Act did pass the House on repassage this week. So that means it's passed both the House and the Senate and is going to the governor's desk to be passed. We were in support of this bill. There is going to be a seat on the Lifelong Colorado Initiative for local input to ensure that Coloradans can age in place and have the services that they need to do so. So we are going to continue to work on that with the governor's office and ensure that we have some a seat at that table. House Bill 1064, prohibit flavored tobacco, regulate synthetic nicotine. CML is neutral on this bill, and it is up for its first committee hearing on Wednesday. I've heard rumblings of possible amendments, but then when I spoke to the sponsor last week, he actually told me he was not running any amendments. So at this point, they are not planning to amend the bill on Wednesday, but things could change, so we shall see. House Bill 1093, updates to the bingo and raffle law. This has been sitting in the House Appropriations Committee for a while, but it did pass the House Appropriations Committee this morning. We are neutral on this bill because they made the changes that we requested. when we were in opposition prior. So there are no more references to any of the slot machines or anything that was concerning to our gaming town members. So this will be moving to the House floor now. House Bill 1104, the Power Line Trails Bill. We are also neutral on this bill. We originally were opposed unless amended to this one, and we were able to get the amendments secured on this bill as well. This is up in Senate Transportation and Energy Committee on Tuesday for its first hearing in the Senate. So we'll just keep an eye on that one and make sure they don't change anything back that we had worked on getting amended out. House Bill 1142, Alcohol Extended Services Hours Permit. We are support if amended on this bill. I'm requesting that they add in a section that these local establishments, when they apply for their state permit for this extended services hours permit, that they also include the approved local permit with that application. The first committee hearing for this bill is scheduled for the House Business Affairs and Labor Committee on Thursday of this week. It's my understanding that there are going to be some substantial amendments to this bill, turning it into a possible study. I haven't yet seen the language on what they will be studying, but that it's my understanding it's going to be turned into more of a study than actually creating the extended services hours permit this year. Moving on, Senate Bill 118, encourage geothermal energy. We are opposed unless amended to this bill. We did not like the permit fee caps that it was creating on geothermal energy, and thought that it was a little unclear as far as if geothermal energy would be required to be included in your master planning documents. Neither of those things changed in the amendments that were put on in committee this last week, so we are still opposed, and it is going to be heard in a finance committee on Wednesday. So still working on that one. And then Senate Bill 120, the regulation of kratom processors, is also going to be heard in Finance Committee on Wednesday. This bill we are neutral on. We are requesting an amendment that ensures that local municipalities can still create ordinances that are more strict than what is in this language. I have heard that there are going to be some substantial amendments to this bill as well, possibly creating a study out of this bill as well, but again, have not seen what they are going to be planning on studying. Originally, this was supposed to set a minimum age for purchasing kratom at 18, requiring the processors or the distributors to report any adverse effects of kratom to the state, and then also requiring that kratom be a pure substance, not be mixed with anything else when selling to consumers. Senate Bill 132, allow vintners, restaurants delivery to consumers. This was in committee this week, and unfortunately was postponed indefinitely in committee. There was concern among the liquor establishments community that it would upset current agreements that are in place. There was substantial discussion in the committee as far as the fact that you can deliver from limited wineries and you can deliver from out of state, but just if they add some sort of restaurant onto their establishment, then they can no longer deliver the wine. And so it seems like it's a conversation that's still going to be continuing for sure, but this particular piece of legislation was PI'd in committee, and we were supportive of the legislation. And then Senate Bill 149, the marijuana industry regulation bill, was just introduced. We are taking a support if amended position on this bill. And we are going to be requesting 2 amendments, one of which is the seed to sale tracking system that the state has is not available to the local licensing authorities. So we are requesting that they make that available to the local licensing authorities as well. Second, there is a piece that requires non-industry involvement on any task force or working groups with regards to marijuana and creation of policies. And we are asking that there be put language in there that it lists out the different groups to pull from for those non-industry people. And we are asking that local licensing authority be one of those groups that they access for non-industry partners in that in those working groups so that we can have more say in what those policies look like. So that's not up in committee until March 23rd, but it has been calendared. So I'm going to start working on getting that done. And then finally, I am still working on the undergrounding transparency bill. So that hasn't gone away yet. We're still working on that. Just wanted to give you that update that still is on the radar. Working on making sure we get more transparency in the undergrounding of utilities projects for you all. So that's what I'm working on. Thanks.
Thanks, Jacqueline. All right, I will round it up here. Let me start with House Bill. I'll start in the House here, and then we'll head over to the Senate. House Bill 1024. This bill purports to transfer or extend the sales tax exemption on public school construction projects to home rule municipalities. The goal being preventing municipalities from taxing those projects. We have about, I think, 5 municipalities that currently tax those projects. And we are opposed to the bill because we have some real concerns around the precedent that it sets when the legislature believes that it has the authority to determine local sales tax bases. So that's a very big bill for us. Unfortunately, it is in the second house right now, in the second chamber. It is over in the Senate. It was heard in the Senate Finance Committee on Wednesday and passed on a party line vote. And so we are going to keep working that piece of legislation and educating members on the Colorado Constitution and why that bill directly conflicts with it. Additionally, House Bill 1152. This is a bill that, as introduced, says that an employer cannot take any adverse actions against an employee for the use of medical marijuana on the premises of the where they are employed or during work hours. And then additionally, no adverse actions for an individual utilizing retail marijuana in after hours. CML is opposed to this bill. There are many organizations opposed to this bill, mainly because this needs to be, employment is a very local decision from CML's perspective. And frankly, we also think that this bill as written is unconstitutional and conflicts with Amendment 64 and the drug-free workplace language that is currently in the Constitution. So luckily, the sponsors recognize that there are a lot of problems with the bill as introduced, and I believe that the bill will be turned into a study. What that study looks like, I'm not exactly sure. It was supposed to be heard in committee yesterday. The bill sponsor did not like the amendment that they received, and so they actually pushed it off until next Thursday. So hopefully I'll have a better idea. If the amendment's written correctly, that it's just a study, I think that we can remove our opposition, assuming that gets adopted. However, I would like to see the language, of course, before making that determination. House Bill 1272, this is one that Heather and I are both working on. Heather, did you talk about this bill? I want to make sure I didn't miss it. Okay, good. Just want to make sure. Good, I didn't want to be redundant. Awesome. So what this bill does right now in certain court actions, if you win, if you are a defendant and you win on a motion to dismiss, you receive attorney's fees automatically, as well as, attorney's fees automatically. There's legislation that removes that ability and would require entities, defendants, which are often public entities, to then go through additional hoops to get those attorney's fees. There's a lot of concern. The feedback that we've received is there's certainly a concern about having to make, while utilizing taxpayer money, having to put additional attorney time on a case that was found to be frivolous. That would be a real concern. And frankly, if there is not automatic attorney's fees, there's also the concern that it would, in fact, not put a stop to a lot of these frivolous cases from being entered to begin with. So that's bill. We have staff discretion to oppose that bill right now. Heather and I are doing some some digging on the real practical implications of the bill. But I anticipate that we will likely oppose that bill when it's in committee next Wednesday. And then House Bill 1287 was recently introduced. This is the one that creates protections for mobile home park residents. Just a little background as to why CML has a support position on this bill. We do. The city of Gunnison brought to our policy committee back in the fall through our policy process a request for CML initiated legislation to create a role for local governments to either purchase or take over a mobile home park in order to help residents also gain the ability to potentially buy the land that their mobile homes are on. This bill 1287 does include that language. It also includes language around lot rent stabilization as well, or rent control. And I did take this bill back through our policy process, through the policy committee and the board, and our membership did vote to support that. So we are supporting that legislation, and that will be up on March 23rd and in the House Transportation and Local Government Committee. Actually, one other bill, there is a draft of a bill sort of being called the PreTrial Bill, if you will. Not modeled after it, but an attempt to do something similar to what Senate Bill 62 did, and then Senate Bill 273. Those were known as the quote jail depopulation bills, where they carved out a number of crimes that an individual could not be arrested on. But those two ultimately died last year with the lack of law enforcement support. In fact, had a lot of law enforcement opposition as well as CML's opposition. The sponsors of the bills last year are still interested in pursuing legislation on that. There is a draft bill going around that really attempts to mirror part of language in a bill that was introduced, ultimately did not pass back in, Senate Bill 161 in 2020. There is language in there that includes municipal offenses. It's very unclear what that means, and so CML is trying to get some amendments well, I guess it wouldn't be an amendment, to see if we can draft some cleaner language so that law enforcement is clear on what crimes they can arrest on and what they cannot. That being said, I know that the chiefs of police are very opposed to it, and I know that other law enforcement agencies may be opposed as well, or organizations, I should say. So although the DAs will not be taking a position, this is one that I will be taking through our policing, special committee on policing for a recommended position, and then I will take that position to our board of directors. Okay, one other thing I want to mention is all of maybe heard me talk about American Rescue Plan Act dollars for housing. We are actually seeing that legislation come to fruition, and so I'll be look for those bills to get introduced hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Specifically, one that provides funding to nonprofits and local governments for affordable housing projects, and then also funds a revolving loan fund as well. I expect CML will be supportive of these pieces of legislation, but I haven't been able to do a deep dive in those drafts yet. Let's see, let's go to the Senate quickly. Senate Bill 113, that is a bill that has to do with artificial intelligence, and specifically facial recognition software. CML was initially opposed unless amended to the legislation. The bill sponsors amended the bill significantly in the first committee, making it easier for law enforcement to still utilize the technology, as well as beefing up the task force that's also created in the bill. As a result of the amendments, the chiefs of police are supportive of the bill, and so CML went ahead and removed our opposition, and so we are now neutral on that legislation. Just flagging it for you all because that did pass the Senate this week and is headed to the House. Senate Bill 145, this is has to do with resources for law enforcement. This is part of the governor's public safety package, and I'm going check my notes here on a few things. But what the bill does is create create 3 new grant programs within the Department of Public Safety. The first one being a crisis prevention and intervention grant program, which local governments will be available or will be eligible to apply. The second one is a program that's specifically focused on resources for law enforcement recruitment, retention, and then a tuition grant program to address the shortages that we've seen from the municipal perspective in law enforcement. We've had a lot of law enforcement leave that profession. And then finally, something called a smart policing program. State's mission for assistance in recruitment and training. And so what it is it creates the intent to create, to increase the number of post-certified peace officers, standards and training board certified and non-certified law enforcement officers, and to create diversity among the law enforcement, so that they represent what, the communities that they serve. So that is a bill that CML supports, and we will, along with the rest of law enforcement, and we will support that as it goes through the process. And that is up for committee hearing, I think, week after next. And then finally, Senate Bill 146. This is also a bill that came from the interim affordable housing transformational task force. Specifically, what this bill does is it transfers $25 million to the Department of Local Affairs, which will then go into the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority for CHAFA's middle income access program. So what this is we have such a kind of crazy situation with our housing prices for ownership and rent, that there's still areas of individuals that don't qualify for low income housing vouchers or any of those programs, but still are more than 50% housing cost burden. And so this program is designed specifically to meet the needs of that population. So that's been a very good program, and CML has always been has had a good partnership with CHAFA, and we are also supporting that legislation. So with that, I will go ahead and wrap up, and we can take any additional questions that you all have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We have just a couple questions that have come through. The first one asks, who are the sponsors of the draft bill, the pretrial one?
Representative Bacon, specifically, from the city of Denver, Jennifer Bacon.
Awesome. Thank you. And then the next one asks if you have any updates on the potential bill to delay Senate Bill 21260, transportation fees.
That's a great question. I do not have an update on that. Just as a reminder, the governor had indicated earlier this year that he would like to see those fees that were created in Senate Bill 260 delayed at least a year. And that it's still the plan, but I don't have an update on when those bills will be introduced. And to be clear, there would have to be a bill introduced to make those changes. So as soon as I know, I will let you all know.
Perfect. Thank you. We had one more come through that asks, who is sponsoring the ARPA housing bill for local government and nonprofit funding?
It's Representative Dylan Roberts from Eagle County and Representative Mary Bradfield from El Paso County, and then Senators James Coleman and Julie Gonzalez from Denver.
Perfect.
All participants on the task force.
Thank you. We have one more sponsor question. Who is the House sponsor for the facial recognition bill?
Representatives Carrie Tipper from Lakewood and Jennifer Bacon from Denver.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, it looks like those are all the questions that we've had so far. As always, I know everyone's more than happy to answer questions if you have others. And I believe you all have Heather, Jacqueline, and the Megans emails at this point. So if you don't, feel free to reach out to me as well. You should receive my emails, and I know that you have consistent communication with them as well. So with that, do you guys have any other closing thoughts before we shut this one down today?
No, I don't. Thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you got some good information. Of course, like McKenna said, please feel free to reach out to us individually. And if you don't know which lobbyist to talk to, feel free to reach out to me, M.Dollar, DOLLAR, at cml.org. And have a great weekend.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good one.